After Jimin suddenly collapses backstage, Jungkook's desperate rush to the hospital reveals a terrifying secret doctors have kept hidden for weeks. "Get him breathing again, now." The doctor's voice cut through the sterile air like a scalpel, sharp and cold. Jungkook's ears were ringing. His hand, still smeared with Jimin's blood from when he cradled him moments ago in the dressing room, trembled as it gripped the steel edge of the emergency room door. The overhead lights flickered, casting fractured shadows across the hallway tiles, but his vision was locked on the red digital numbers above the trauma room entrance. 2:13 a.m. That was the moment everything had shattered. Just 20 minutes earlier they had been laughing. Jimin had flopped onto the leather couch in their green room, a towel draped lazily over his damp hair, still flushed from their encore performance. His smile was tired, but it was real. Jungkook had noticed how his fingers trembled when he reached for his water bottle, but he didn't say anything. He thought it was adrenaline, fatigue maybe, nothing unusual. Nothing that would explain why, seconds later, Jimin's eyes would roll back, his body convulsing violently before collapsing onto the carpet like a lifeless doll. Everything after that felt like fragments of a nightmare Jungkook couldn't wake up from. The scream he didn't realize had come from his own throat, the staff flooding in, the manager shouting into his phone for an ambulance, the sickening thud of Jimin's head hitting the floor, the blood. Jungkook had dropped to his knees beside him, screaming his name, begging him to open his eyes, to stay with him. But Jimin's body had gone limp, too limp, as if something vital had been unplugged. Now standing outside the ER, his white t-shirt soaked with sweat and smeared crimson near his collarbone, Jungkook couldn't breathe. His fingers kept reaching for the doorknob, pulling away, reaching again. The beeping inside intensified, rapid-fire warnings from machines Jungkook couldn't understand. The curtain was drawn around Jimin's bed. Nurses moved quickly, silent professionals. A doctor shouted again, "He's crashing, where's the epinephrine?" Jungkook stepped back, hand pressed to his chest, trying to steady his own heart. His mind reeled. This wasn't supposed to happen. They had just wrapped one of the most iconic nights of their careers. Thousands of fans chanting their names, fireworks still echoing in their ears, and now, this. The surreal contrast made his stomach lurch. He could still hear the crowd's final scream ringing in his memory as if the universe was mocking him. The door to the trauma bay swung open. A tall woman in dark scrubs walked out, her eyes scanning, stopping on Jungkook. "You're Jimin Jungkook?" she asked. He nodded, unable to speak. "You're listed as emergency contact. Follow me." He stumbled after her down a corridor that smelled of antiseptic and something metallic, something that made his skin crawl. She pushed through another door and gestured to a chair. "Sit," she said gently. "We'll need to talk in a moment." "I want to see him," Jungkook said hoarsely. "In a moment," she repeated. "Right now we need you calm, because what I'm about to tell you, it won't be easy." His breath hitched. He braced for the worst, cardiac arrest, brain aneurysm, death. But her words were stranger than he expected. "We found something in his blood work. We're still confirming, but—" She hesitated, then leaned in. "This wasn't a normal collapse. There are markers, foreign compounds. It's possible Jimin was poisoned." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Jungkook blinked. "What?" "I'm sorry," the doctor said. "We've alerted the authorities. But in the meantime, we need you to think. Has Jimin complained recently? Of fatigue? Nausea? Has he changed routines? Meals? Has anyone had unusual access to him?" Jungkook shook his head slowly, stunned. No, nothing. He's been tired, but we all are. There's pressure, but that's normal. He was fine. He was joking 10 minutes before it happened." The doctor nodded. "That's what makes this harder. His vitals are unstable. We've induced a coma to reduce cerebral stress. He's not out of danger." Jungkook gripped the edge of the chair, knuckles white. Poisoned? Who would do that to Jimin? Why? The thought of someone deliberately hurting the kindest person he knew twisted something deep in his gut. He replayed the last few days. Had anyone seemed off? The catering crew? The stylists? He couldn't think straight. He finally stood. "I need to see him." She didn't stop him this time. He was led into a small, dim ICU room where machines hummed and beeped rhythmically. There, behind the glass, Jimin lay motionless, a breathing tube taped to his mouth, wires crawling across his chest like vines, eyes sealed shut beneath bruised lids. His skin looked too pale against the stark white pillow. Jungkook stepped in slowly like he might wake him. "Hyung," his voice cracked, "I'm here." He sat beside the bed, reached for Jimin's hand. It was cold, not lifeless but wrong. He swallowed back a sob. "You're going to be okay, you hear me? I'm going to find out who did this, I swear." As the minutes passed, his emotions churned between panic and fury. He had always protected Jimin, not just on stage but off it. But this he hadn't seen coming. He leaned closer, brushing hair off Jimin's forehead. "Don't leave me," he whispered. Outside the room, someone watched. A man in a pressed black suit, earpiece barely visible beneath his slick-back hair, took one last look through the observation window before turning away. He pulled out a phone, typed something fast, and disappeared down the hall without a word. Inside the ICU, Jungkook sat frozen, and across town, another member of BTS, sitting alone in a hotel room, received a message that made his heart stop. The sender was blocked. The message read, "You're next." "You're next." The words stared back at Taehyung from the cracked screen of his phone, glowing faintly in the darkness of the hotel suite. He blinked twice, trying to convince himself he was hallucinating. He was. The message was real. The sender was unknown, the timestamp was minutes ago, and his blood had turned to ice. He had only just seen the news alert flash across the TV. BTS member Park Jimin hospitalized after on stage. No details had followed. He had tried calling Jungkook, tried calling their manager, but everything went straight to voicemail. And now this. His fingers trembled as he clutched the phone tighter, heart pounding against his ribs with a force that made his vision blur. He stumbled back from the window where he'd been standing moments ago, watching the rain fall over Los Angeles, and now all he could hear was the ringing in his ears and his own pulse screaming at him to run, hide, do something, anything. But he was paralyzed. Then a knock on the door. 3 slow taps. He froze. Another knock, this time faster, urgent, not threatening yet. He crept toward the entrance like prey approaching a trap, muscles tense like a wire about to snap. He looked through the peephole. It was Jungkook. Taehyung didn't hesitate. He ripped the door open, grabbed Jungkook by the collar and yanked him inside. "What the hell is going on?" he snapped, voice raw. "What happened to Jimin?" Jungkook looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 hours. His clothes were still stained with Jimin's blood, his eyes red and swollen, face pale and unreadable. "He's in a coma," he said softly. "They think it was poison." Taehyung staggered back, hand clutched to his mouth. No, that's not possible. Who would? Why would someone?" "They don't know," Jungkook said, packing now, fists clenched, fury simmering under every word. "They found foreign compounds. It wasn't accidental. Someone planned this, and we didn't see it coming." Taehyung sank onto the armrest of the couch, barely breathing. "I got a message," he said suddenly. "Just now, it said, 'You're next.'" Jungkook stopped moving. He turned slowly, face pale. "Show me." Taehyung handed over the phone, and as Jungkook read the screen, something in his expression changed, like a lock snapping open inside his skull, connecting dots that had been floating aimlessly just hours earlier. "They're targeting us," he said. "This isn't just about Jimin." "What does that mean?" Taehyung asked, voice cracking. Jungkook sat down across from him, leaning forward, elbows on knees. "It means we're part of something bigger, something someone's trying to hide or destroy. And Jimin, he was the first one to get too close." Taehyung narrowed his eyes. "Too close to what?" Jungkook hesitated. "There's something I haven't told anyone. 2 weeks ago, I found Jimin crying in the back hallway of the studio. I thought it was exhaustion. I was going to walk away. But then he said something. He said, 'I know the truth.' But I can't tell them." Taehyung stared. "What truth?" Jungkook's voice dropped. I don't know, he never told me, but he was paranoid after that. He changed his routine. He stopped eating unless one of us watched the food. He asked me to keep an eye on the staff. He said someone was following him. And you didn't say anything, Taehyung snapped, standing. You let him walk around thinking he was being hunted and you said nothing. I didn't know what to believe, Jungkook shouted back, standing too. I thought maybe it was stress or anxiety or, hell, I don't know, Taehyung. I didn't want to think it was real. None of us want to believe something like this could happen. The room pulsed with tension, their breaths heavy and uneven. Taehyung turned away, packing now. You should have told me. I'm telling you now. It's too late. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Jungkook's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. A voice on the other end whispered, "You're being watched." The line went dead. Jungkook stared at the phone in disbelief. That wasn't a warning, that was a reminder. Taehyung grabbed his coat. We're not safe here. We can't just run, Jungkook said, following him. They'll find us. We need to figure out who's behind this. You think it's HYBE? Taehyung asked without turning around. Jungkook hesitated. If it is, then we're in more danger than we thought. The car ride to the hospital was a blur. They didn't speak. The air between them was heavy with unspoken fears and spiraling thoughts. The city outside looked the same, neon lights, taxis, people laughing on sidewalks, unaware that something monstrous was unfolding in the shadows. At the hospital, chaos had found its rhythm. The ICU ward was dim and quiet except for the relentless beep of machines. Jungkook led the way to Jimin's room, but something was wrong. The bed was empty. The wires were unplugged. The monitors were off. A nurse rushed by. Where Jimin? Jungkook demanded. The nurse froze. They moved him. He coded again 15 minutes ago, had to be rushed to a private secure floor. Doctors said his condition's deteriorating. Take us to him. I can't, orders from the top, no visitors. Taehyung stepped forward. We're his family. But the nurse shook her head, eyes nervous. They said no one, not even management. This goes beyond protocol. Jungkook's fists clenched. What the hell is going on? A man in a suit appeared behind them. That's what we're here to find out. They turned. He held out a badge. Detective Han Seojin, LAPD. I'm leading the investigation. We have reason to believe your group is being targeted. Taehyung raised a brow. You think? The detective didn't flinch. We found a listening device in Jimin's hotel suite, hidden inside a light fixture. We also found traces of a substance banned by the military. Only a few people in this country even have access to it. Are you saying this is political? Jungkook asked. I'm saying, the detective replied, that you're involved in something that might be bigger than just one idol group. Taehyung laughed bitterly. We're singers, not spies. Not anymore. A door down the hall opened and a voice called out urgently, Detective Code Black, I see you breach. Everyone turned. Chaos erupted, doctors shouting, security flooding the hallway. Someone had tried to enter Jimin's room. They had been stopped. Barely. The intruder escaped. Jungkook didn't wait. He broke into a run, shoving past guards, racing toward the secured wing. Taehyung followed. But when they arrived, Jimin's door was ajar, and the nurse on the floor was unconscious, bleeding from a blow to the head. Jimin was gone. His bed was empty again. No one saw who took him. Only a syringe on the floor remained, glinting under the cold light. And on the wall, scrawled in hurried strokes with something red that might have been blood, were 3 words. He knew everything. You let him get taken, Taehyung roared, his voice echoing down the corridor like a thunderclap as security scrambled past them. You said he was under protection. What kind of protection lets someone vanish from under your noses? Detective Han's jaw tightened, the tendons in his neck flaring as he tried to remain calm, but Jungkook could see the storm brewing in his eyes. "I need both of you to calm down before this turns into a bigger mess," he said through gritted teeth. "We have protocols." "Your protocols are bullshit," Jungkook snapped, stepping forward until he was inches from Han's face. "This isn't just some case for you. This is our brother. This is Jimin. He was in a coma and someone broke through a hospital full of people and took him like he was a bag of groceries. What kind of monster can do that unless someone on the inside helped them?" Han didn't respond, but the silence was loud. Jungkook saw it in his eyes. He knew. There had been a breach. Not just a physical one, but a betrayal, someone close, someone trusted. Taehyung turned and punched the wall with a force that made his knuckles bleed. "This is a fucking nightmare," he whispered, voice cracking. "He was right there. I didn't even get to say anything to him. He was right there." The hallway was swarming now. Press, security, unfamiliar suits in unmarked jackets flashing IDs and barking orders. The air smelled like antiseptic and adrenaline, thick and heavy with dread. Jungkook watched through the window as nurses cried and a doctor slammed his clipboard against the nurses' station. Chaos reigned. A woman in a black turtleneck and tight ponytail approached, her heels clicking with precise authority. She didn't introduce herself, didn't ask permission. "I'm with the Ministry of Intelligence," she said coldly. "Effective immediately, this investigation is being elevated to classified national security status. I'll be taking over." Detective Han scoffed. "Since when does a missing pop star qualify as a national threat?" "Since you found traces of HZ9, she said calmly, eyes locked on his. "Which, by the way, is not just banned by the military. It was erased from all official records 3 years ago." Taehyung blinked. "What the hell is HZ9? She turned to him. "A neurotoxin developed during a black-budget operation in East Asia. Microscopic, nearly undetectable, and when mixed with adrenaline, it can shut down the brain's central systems in under 30 seconds. That's what was in Jimin's bloodstream." Jungkook felt his knees weaken. They tried to kill him using something that's not even supposed to exist anymore. The woman nodded. "And now whoever administered it just removed him from one of the most heavily monitored hospitals in this city without triggering any real surveillance. You see why we're interested." Taehyung leaned in. "Why would anyone do this to Jimin? He's not a soldier, he's not a spy, he's an artist." "Not everything is about who you are," she replied. "Sometimes it's about what you saw, what you heard, or who you talked to when you weren't supposed to." Jungkook's stomach turned. "What aren't you telling us?" She glanced at her watch, then looked back at them. 10 days ago, Jimin's passport was used to enter a diplomatic reception in Geneva. He wasn't scheduled to be there. There's CCTV footage of him speaking with a known whistleblower, someone under federal watch. We don't know what was discussed. The audio was wiped. But less than 48 hours later, that man was found dead in his apartment. Suicide, they claimed. But the autopsy showed signs of restraint bruises on his wrists. "It wasn't suicide." "That doesn't make sense," Taehyung muttered. "We were in Seoul. Jimin never left the country." "Not officially," she said. "But someone used his identity to get in. That's what triggered the surveillance flag. And when Jimin started acting paranoid, when he became afraid to eat, afraid to sleep, it matched a pattern we've seen before. Someone learned something that wasn't supposed to reach the surface." Jungkook swallowed hard. "You think someone used his name, his face, to access something, then tried to eliminate him so he couldn't talk?" "That's one theory." "Then where is he now?" Taehyung asked, voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer. Her phone buzzed. She read something quickly, then looked up again. There was movement. An unregistered ambulance just left a private airport hangar 10 minutes ago. Inside was a gurney with a male occupant matching Jimin's build. Destination unknown. Jungkook lunged. "Then what the hell are we doing standing here? I'm not authorized to let you get involved." I don't give a damn about authorization, Jungkook snapped. That's my best friend. Taehyung stepped beside him. And mine, you're not cutting us out of this. There was a long pause. Finally, the woman sighed. Fine, but if you're in. You follow my lead. One mistake in your liabilities, understand? They nodded. Then we leave now. As they moved through the back exit, avoiding the press and the police, Taehyung whispered to Jungkook, Do you really believe this goes that deep? Jungkook's voice was tight. At this point, I believe anything. They were driven in a black SUV through the dark veins of the city. The woman, whose name they still didn't know, made several encrypted calls, each one more urgent than the last. Finally, she turned to them. We intercepted a signal. They're using an abandoned research facility north of Pasadena. It used to be a neurological testing center, shut down 3 years ago. But satellite scans picked up activity, heat signatures, electricity spikes, and encrypted drone traffic. It's the only lead we have. They didn't speak again until they arrived. The building was a ghost, peeling paint, broken windows, vines crawling up its spine like veins. But the moment they stepped inside, everything changed. The walls were reinforced. The elevator worked. Cameras blinked red in the corners. Someone was here. Inside, down 2 levels, they heard the echo of voices, metal on metal, and a sound that made Jungkook's stomach twist. A scream. It was Jimin. Stay back, the woman hissed, drawing a small weapon from her jacket. But Jungkook didn't listen. He bolted down the hallway, feet pounding against cold concrete, Taehyung on his heels. He reached the source of the scream, steel doors bolted shut. Without thinking, he kicked the access panel. Sparks flew. The door creaked open. And inside, strapped to a gurney, weak but conscious, was Jimin, pale, shaking, but alive. Jungkook, his voice was a whisper. Is it really you? Jungkook ran to him, hands fumbling to release the straps. It's me. I'm here. You're safe now. Taehyung appeared beside them, cupping Jimin's face with trembling hands. Hyung, we're here. We found you. Jimin's eyes brimmed with tears. You shouldn't have come, he whispered. Don't say that, Jungkook said. We've got you. No, listen. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's wrist, suddenly stronger than before. They weren't after me. They wanted me to say something. I didn't. I held out. But they knew one of you already knew the truth. What are you talking about? Taehyung asked. Jimin's gaze was sharp. It's not over, it's just beginning. They're watching us from inside. A shot rang out behind them. The woman in black dropped to the floor, blood pooling fast. Jungkook turned around, breath frozen in his chest. Standing in the doorway, gun still smoking, was someone he had trusted with his life. The last person he ever expected to betray them. Namjoon. The silence was unbearable. Namjoon's figure stood like a ghost in the flickering fluorescent light, the gun in his hand lowered but still warm with the echo of betrayal. Jungkook couldn't move. Taehyung's body tensed beside him like a taut wire stretched to its snapping point, and Jimin, strapped weakly to the gurney, let out a broken whisper. No. Namjoon didn't blink. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he said, his voice flat, strangely calm, as if he were explaining the weather, not standing over the body of a woman he had just shot in cold blood. I tried to stop it. What the fuck did you do? Jungkook's voice shook as he stepped between Jimin and Namjoon. What are you saying? You're part of this. Namjoon's face didn't change. He looked tired, hollowed out by secrets. I tried to protect you, all of you, but I couldn't control it, not after Geneva. Taehyung stepped forward now, voice rising like a storm breaking. You lied to us. You let Jimin suffer. You watched him lose his mind and said nothing. Why? Why would you do that, Namjoon? Why would you betray us? I didn't betray you, Namjoon said, shaking his head slowly. I betrayed them. What the hell are you talking about? Jungkook shouted. You killed someone. Namjoon's grip on the gun loosened slightly. She wasn't who she said she was. None of them are. That woman worked for a covert division under the Ministry of Cultural Security, an agency that doesn't exist on paper. Her job was to eliminate leaks. Jimin wasn't supposed to survive Geneva, but he did. And when he did, he became a liability. Jimin struggled to speak. You knew they would come for me. I tried to stall them, Namjoon replied. I tried to hide you. I falsified reports, redirected surveillance feeds. But once you started showing symptoms, once the HZ9 started breaking down your body, I couldn't stop the protocols anymore. You let me rot in silence, Jimin croaked, eyes wet with rage. You stood on stage with me and smiled while my insides were turning to dust. I had no choice, Namjoon whispered. They were watching me too. Taehyung stepped forward, fists clenched. Who the fuck are they, Namjoon? You keep saying they like it explains anything. You were our leader, our brother. You're supposed to protect us. Instead, you're pointing a gun in our direction like we're enemies. Namjoon's eyes welled. I was protecting you the only way I knew how, by playing their game. Fuck their game, Jungkook hissed. You think you get to decide who lives or dies because you played chess with ghosts. The air shifted. Sirens began to wail in the distance. Backup was coming, or more enemies. No one knew. Jimin winced, coughing violently as blood spilled at the corners of his lips. Jungkook rushed to his side. We have to get him out of here, he said, eyes darting to Taehyung. Now. Namjoon took a step back, then dropped the gun. It clattered to the floor. Take the east stairwell, he said hoarsely. There's a laundry chute. It leads to the underground dock. There's a delivery van parked near the tunnel exit. The keys are in the glove box. It's registered to a shell company. It should get you past the perimeter. Jungkook didn't move. Why are you helping now? Because it's too late for me, Namjoon said, but not for you. Taehyung grabbed his arm. Come with us. Namjoon looked at him, and for a moment the real him, the one they all knew, glimmered behind those eyes. They won't stop until every one of us is silenced. But if one of you makes it out, if even one of you exposes what happened, then none of this will be for nothing. Jungkook lifted Jimin onto his shoulders, the older boy barely conscious but holding on. Taehyung didn't look back as they ran. The stairwell was damp, lined with rusted pipes and peeling walls. The sound of their footsteps echoed like gunshots. They found the chute behind a maintenance panel and slid Jimin down first, cushioned by an old mattress. Then Taehyung. Jungkook followed last, blood pumping so hard in his ears he barely heard the explosion behind them. The building trembled. The ground shook. Fire licked the edge of the horizon as they emerged into the underground dock. Jungkook threw open the van door, shoved the key in the ignition, and slammed his foot on the gas. As the tunnel swallowed them, Taehyung finally spoke. Do you think he survived? Jungkook didn't answer. Jimin stirred in the backseat. They were experimenting on people, he murmured. I saw documents, names, files. It wasn't just me. There were others from other industries, musicians, actors, politicians. They were testing ways to control the brain, erase memories, implant new ones. I wasn't supposed to remember Geneva, but I did. Taehyung looked back at him. What did you see? Jimin's voice was barely audible. A list of those who were compromised, controlled. One of the names was mine. Jungkook gripped the wheel tighter. And the other? Taehyung asked slowly. Jimin stared at him. It was yours. The van plunged into the night as behind them, the facility burned to ash, taking with it every trace of what had just unfolded, except the three of them, and the truth now burning inside them like a fuse. You're lying. Taehyung's voice cut through the humming silence of the van, low and trembling, as the vehicle sped through the shadowed outskirts of Los Angeles. His hands clenched into fists on his lap, and his eyes, glassy with disbelief, were locked on Jimin's frail figure in the backseat. The road ahead blurred, the headlights carving narrow tunnels through the darkness, but Jungkook kept his eyes forward, silent, every muscle in his body straining under the weight of what had just been said. I'm not, Jimin rasped, his voice barely a whisper but filled with something cold. Your name was on the list. Taehyung turned fully now, chest heaving, eyes wide with rage and heartbreak. That's not possible, I didn't, what list? What the fuck are you talking about, Jimin? Jimin sat up slightly, wincing as his body trembled, his veins still raw from the chemical hell that had nearly taken his life. I saw it on the screen, in Geneva. I thought I was dreaming, I thought maybe it was a simulation, but when I woke up it was burned into my memory. 8 names, mine, yours, others I didn't recognize, all marked. Marked for what? Jungkook asked, his voice quiet but thick with dread. Mind alteration, Jimin said, behavioral manipulation, indoctrination testing. The document was titled Project Seraphim. It had classifications above top secret. Some of it was redacted, but I could still read pieces. They weren't just controlling us. They were using us. Taehyung laughed, a bitter sound that cracked the air. That's insane. You're talking about conspiracy theory garbage, hypnosis, mind control. This isn't a fucking sci-fi movie, Jimin. You almost died. Your brain's still not clear. I know what I saw, Jimin snapped, eyes flashing. Don't you dare treat me like I imagined this. Jungkook slammed the brakes. The van screeched to a halt in the middle of an abandoned back road, tires skidding against gravel. The sudden force threw all of them forward. Dust billowed around the headlights as the engine idled, and silence fell again like ash after an explosion. We need to talk, Jungkook said without turning around. Now, before we go any further, we have to be honest with each other, completely. Because if Jimin telling the truth, then we can't trust anyone, not even ourselves. Taehyung shook his head, his face pale and stricken. You think I've been compromised, controlled? Jungkook turned finally, his voice firm but not cruel. I think something happening to all of us, and none of us understand the full picture. And if there's even a 1% chance that Jimin's right, then we have to consider the possibility that someone has been inside our heads. Jimin looked at Taehyung, eyes full of sorrow. You started changing, T. Months ago, you became distant, aggressive. You missed meetings, forgot lyrics, snapped at staff. And then suddenly, you didn't remember any of it. You'd apologize like nothing had happened. Taehyung's lips parted slightly. I thought I was just tired. That's what I thought too, Jimin said. Until I realized I wasn't dreaming about Geneva, I was remembering it. Jungkook rubbed his temples. What if they planted things in us? Thoughts, fears, memories. What if they've been pulling strings for years? I don't remember anything like that, Taehyung said, but even as he spoke, his voice faltered. But sometimes I get these headaches, like flashing lights. I hear voices in my sleep. I thought it was stress. What do they say? Jimin asked quickly. Taehyung hesitated. They tell me not to trust you. Silence. They tell me Jungkook is hiding things, that you're a threat, that if I don't stop you, we'll all die. Jungkook's heart pounded. Have you ever blacked out? Yes, Taehyung whispered, twice. Do you remember what you did during that time? No. Jimin closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. Then it's worse than I thought. Jungkook restarted the van, pulling off the road and into an abandoned lot surrounded by trees. He killed the engine and turned to both of them. We need answers. No more speculation. No more guessing. We have to go somewhere no one can trace. Somewhere we can get help from someone who isn't part of this machine. Taehyung looked at him, suspicious. Who? There's someone in Nevada, Jungkook said. A man named Dr. Evan Cade. He was a military neuroscientist. He went off the grid 5 years ago after he testified in a closed court hearing about illegal memory experiments being conducted on civilians. He disappeared the day after. I found his name in a file Jimin gave me 3 months ago. I didn't understand it then. I do now. Jimin nodded. He's the only person who might know how to undo this. Assuming he's still alive, Taehyung muttered. Jungkook looked at him carefully. You don't have to come. I do, Taehyung said. If I've been used, if something's been living inside me, I need to know. The journey was long. They drove in shifts, switching between silence and sudden bursts of fevered conversation. Jimin told them more about Geneva, how he had been lured under the pretense of a solo performance for a diplomatic cultural event, how he had been taken from the hotel, injected with something, and strapped to a chair in a room where voices echoed from hidden speakers, asking him questions he couldn't understand. He remembered flashes, lights, images, screams, his own and others. They arrived at the edge of a dusty Nevada ghost town as the sun began to rise. Old signs hung crookedly from half-collapsed shops. A rusted diner sat crooked at the center of the square. No people, no movement, just the wind and the sound of their own boots crunching on gravel. The coordinates Jungkook had found pointed to a house on the outskirts, a bunker-like structure with heavy walls, reinforced glass and solar panels lining the roof. No doorbell, just a camera embedded in the stone wall. Jungkook approached slowly. "Dr. Evan Cade," he said to the lens. "My name is Jungkook. I know what happened in Geneva. We need your help." Silence. Then the speaker crackled. "I warned them this would happen." The door unlocked with a hiss. They stepped inside. The air was clean, sterile. The walls were lined with books and screens, and there, seated calmly in a chair in the center of the room, was a man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. "You brought the Seraphim subjects here?" he asked coldly. Jungkook nodded. "They've been used. We think it's still active." Dr. Cade stood slowly. "Then we don't have much time. If Subject 5 has already begun experiencing blackouts, it means the conditioning phase is over. The next phase is trigger activation." "Subject 5?" Taehyung asked. Cade looked at him. "That's you." Taehyung's face drained of color. "What's the trigger?" "That's what we have to find out," Cade said, walking toward a steel cabinet and pulling out a black case. "Because if it activates, you won't just forget who you are." He opened the case. "You'll forget who they are too." And buried inside was a photo of the three of them. Burning. No. What the fuck is that supposed to mean?" Taehyung's voice cracked as he stared at the photograph in Dr. Cade's hand. It was burned around the edges, blackened and warped, but unmistakable. The image was of the three of them, Jimin, Jungkook, and himself, standing together in front of a vast LED stage backdrop. Their faces frozen mid-laugh. A moment that should have been pure, real, untouchable, but the photo was marred. Flames had licked across their figures like a warning, like a prophecy. "This is what they do," Dr. Cade said quietly, turning the photo over. On the back, handwritten in red ink, were three words: "Identity not fixed." They dismantle the bond between subjects first, not by force but by erasure. They make you question reality, break your foundation. By the time the trigger activates, your trust in each other is already gone. Jimin's voice was barely above a whisper. "And then what happens?" Dr. Cade looked at him with the kind of tired that went deeper than bone. "Then the subject becomes the weapon." Jungkook backed away slowly, trying to process the nightmare unfolding in front of him. "Taehyung's not a weapon. He's our brother." Cade didn't blink. "I've studied this program for over a decade. It began as a joint psychological warfare project during international diplomacy collapses. When trust between nations eroded, they built people who could pass as normal celebrities, influencers, public figures. But beneath the surface, their memories were fragmented, altered, rewritten with surgical precision. They weren't just puppets. They were bombs, waiting for the right word, the right moment. And when that trigger hit, Taehyung shot forward, grabbing Cade by the collar. "Then tell me what my trigger is." Cade didn't flinch. "I don't know." "You said it's already been activated." "I said it's near, not that it's happened. The headaches, the blackouts, the voices, that means it's priming. You're still in control for now." Jimin clutched his side, groaning as he stood. "If we don't find the trigger, he could hurt someone. He could." "I would never hurt you," Taehyung shouted, turning sharply. Don't you dare say that. But Jimin's eyes were wet now. You already have T. That night in Busan when I fell down the stairs, I always thought I just slipped. But now I remember your eyes. You were behind me. You didn't say a word. You didn't help me up. That wasn't me, Taehyung whispered, voice shaking. I don't even remember that night. Exactly, Jungkook said, stepping between them. That's what they want, us doubting each other, tearing each other apart. We cannot let them win. We stay together. Together, Taehyung laughed bitterly, turning away. You want to stay together with a time bomb strapped to your back. Maybe I do, Jungkook said. Because if we leave you alone, they'll find you and use you again. At least here we have a chance to stop it. Dr. Cade closed the case and gestured to a second room beyond a locked glass door. I have an interface, neural mapping technology. If Taehyung consents, I can extract and isolate implanted sequences, but it's invasive, painful, and dangerous. I don't care, Taehyung said without hesitation. Do it. I need your full consent, Cade said slowly. Once we start, we can't stop. And if there's a second layer of programming, failsafes, I can't guarantee you'll wake up the same. Taehyung locked eyes with Jungkook. If I change, if something goes wrong, you end it. Promise me. No. Promise me, Jungkook. I can't because I won't. Jimin stepped forward, then I will. No, Jungkook snapped, his voice breaking. This isn't who we are. But maybe it's who I was made to be, Taehyung whispered. Dr. Cade opened the door. Inside, the room was clinical, cold. Wires hung from the ceiling. A reclined metal chair waited under a grid of blinking red lights. It looked like a throne for the condemned. Taehyung sat without hesitation. The machine hissed to life. Cade began attaching nodes to Taehyung's temples, chest, wrists. A narrow visor lowered over his eyes, feeding pulses of low-frequency light into his retinas. I'm going to ask you questions, Cade said. You may not remember the answers. That's okay. The machine will read the neurological responses. Taehyung nodded. What's your name? Kim Taehyung. Where were you born? Daegu. When did you first meet Jimin? In 2012. Do you trust him? Taehyung hesitated. Yes. Jimin flinched. Do you trust Jungkook? Another pause. Yes. Jungkook clenched his fists. Cade glanced at the monitor. Lies, he said quietly. What? Taehyung snapped. Your mouth says yes, but your brain is screaming no. I didn't mean to, Taehyung winced, a tremor rolling through him. The monitor spiked. Red warning lights blinked. What's happening? Jungkook asked. He's fighting the override, Cade said. Something is surfacing, something old. Taehyung cried out as his body arched against the chair. His limbs spasmed. The lights flickered. Then he went still. Jimin said, voice shaking. Taehyung's eyes opened. But they weren't the same. His gaze was hollow, empty, like someone else had taken the wheel. Cade froze. Shit, we triggered it. He's inside the command shell now. Taehyung, Jungkook whispered. Taehyung tilted his head. And then he smiled. But it was Taehyung's smile. Unit 5 online, he said. Jimin stumbled backward. Jungkook stepped forward. Listen to me, fight it, you're not a machine. But Taehyung didn't even blink. Command authorization required. Cade hissed, typing rapidly. I might be able to override it from the interface. Give me a minute. Who activated the sequence? Jungkook demanded. Taehyung's lips moved mechanically. Remote command. From where? Unknown. Purpose. Mission parameters classified. Jimin was crying now. Stop it, please come back. Taehyung's body began to twitch again. Command failed. Memory bleed detected. Stabilization required. Cade slammed his fist against the console. They implanted a failsafe. If he remembers too much, he crashes. Jungkook stepped forward and placed a hand on Taehyung's chest. Hyung, I know you're in there. Remember that night in Tokyo, the rooftop? You said we were more than just performers. You said we were family. Taehyung's breath caught. Jungkook leaned closer. You promised me you never walk away. You looked me in the eye and said it didn't matter what the world wanted, we would stay true to each other. So if anything in you remembers that night, come back. For a long second, nothing happened. Then Taehyung whispered, rooftop. The machine screamed. The screen turned white. And then he collapsed. Cade rushed forward, detaching wires. We're losing him. Jimin screamed his name. Jungkook fell to his knees. The lights in the lab exploded. And everything went black. It was the sound of rain that pulled Jungkook back. Not the artificial kind that trickled from speakers backstage, not the echo of applause, not the beep of monitors or the high-pitched screech of machines dying, but real rain. Cold, unpredictable, and deafening against shattered glass. His eyes snapped open to smoke-filled air and flickering emergency lights. The bunker was in ruins. Wires hung like vines, dripping sparks. The power grid was gone. The neural chair had been split in half, cables torn, screen shattered. And Taehyung was gone. Jungkook stumbled to his feet, coughing as the smoke filled his lungs. Jimin, he called, voice hoarse. A groan came from beneath an overturned cabinet. He rushed over, pulling debris with shaking hands until he found Jimin curled into himself, bleeding from his forehead but conscious. You okay? Jungkook asked. Jimin nodded weakly. What happened? I don't know, everything went white, then. Jimin sat up dizzy. He's not here. Panic flared in Jimin's eyes. You mean he got out? No, I mean someone took him. They both turned slowly toward the wall where the reinforced exit had been. The steel was torn outward, not inward, ripped apart like a soda can, not by force but with purpose. Someone had broken in, bypassed Cade's entire defense system, and extracted Taehyung while they were unconscious. Cade, Jimin asked. Jungkook found him slumped against the far wall, lifeless, a jagged piece of metal lodged in his chest. He had died trying to protect the data console, which was now cracked open and sparking intermittently. Jimin dropped beside him. He died trying to save Taehyung. Jungkook shook his head, or maybe trying to shut him down. There was a silence that neither of them dared to fill, not yet, not with that thought lingering. They dug through what was left of the console, pulling any salvageable drives, documents, and fragments of code. One piece still worked, a cracked monitor flickering between static and an old file. Jungkook tapped the screen and it played. It was footage, grainy, from a darkened conference room. A voice spoke off camera, American, cold. Subject 5 has shown accelerated cognitive restructuring, increased response to emotional stimulus, memory anchor still intact, designated as Jian Jungkook. Recommendation: sever anchor before deployment. Jimin blinked. They were planning to erase you from his mind. Or worse, Jungkook said, use me to push him over the edge. The voice continued. If anchor is not severed, fallback protocol activates. Full assimilation. Subject will override all previously known moral limits to fulfill primary mission. And what is the primary mission? Another voice asked. The man responded simply. Terminate all assets with unauthorized knowledge. Jimin looked at Jungkook slowly. That's us. There was no time left to debate. They gathered what they could and fled the collapsing facility just minutes before sirens echoed across the valley, unmarked choppers descending from behind the hills. Too late. Again. The sun had risen now, blood orange behind a haze of smoke and storm clouds, and they were once again on the run. Inside a stolen car from the outskirts of the ghost town, they sat in silence, the radio broken, the road endless. But it was Jimin who spoke first. I think I've seen this before. Jungkook looked at him. Seen what? This exact road, this exact moment, but not in real life, in my dreams or implanted memories. Jungkook didn't answer. I think we're being watched again, Jimin continued, even now. Jungkook clenched the wheel tighter. Then we have to stop running. Jimin turned to him, wary. What do you mean? We need to find Taehyung, before they use him, before they make him do something he'll never come back from. Jimin hesitated. What if we can't? What if they've already erased us from him? Jungkook's voice was steady. Then I'll remind him. Back in the control room of a facility hidden beneath an art museum in Berlin, Taehyung sat in a chair even colder than the last. This one had no restraints. He didn't need them, because he didn't fight anymore. His eyes were blank, his body still. His voice, when it came, was flat, robotic, distant. I'm ready. Across from him sat a man they had never seen. The true handler, the ghost behind Geneva, the one who had activated the failsafe. You've done well, Subject 5, the man said. But you have one final task. Eliminate the anchor. Yes, Taehyung replied. He reached into the small case beside him and pulled out a photo. It was of Jungkook, candid, smiling, alive. Taehyung stared at it for a long moment. His hand trembled. But the rest of him remained still. The handler smiled. Burn it. Taehyung struck a match. The flame danced. But before he dropped it onto the photo, he whispered something. Something only he could hear. Rooftop. Then he closed his eyes. And let the match die. A warning blared on the console. Memory breach detected. The handler stood quickly. What the hell? Taehyung's eyes opened. And this time they were his. You shouldn't have brought the rooftop back. Taehyung's voice was low, dangerous, and laced with a venomous calm that made the handler freeze in place. The sterile hum of the underground facility was suddenly swallowed by a silence that screamed louder than any alarm. Red lights pulsed along the walls like a heartbeat accelerating toward catastrophe. The air had changed. Something was no longer under control. I said burn it, the handler barked, stepping forward, voice raised now, an edge of panic bleeding through his command. But Taehyung didn't move. The match had died between his fingers, untouched by the glossy photo of Jungkook still resting in his palm. His expression didn't twist in rebellion. He didn't shout or lunge. That would have been easier to contain. Instead, his stillness radiated a terrifying clarity. Do you know what that word means to me? Taehyung asked softly, lifting his eyes. Rooftop. The handler's finger moved to the kill switch at the panel. One press, and Subject 5 would drop, his synapses flooded with chemicals that would wipe the last hour from his mind, or worse. But before his hand made it to the button, Taehyung moved. Not like a machine. Like a ghost. His palm smashed into the handler's throat, cutting off the scream before it began. In a flash, he vaulted over the console, twisted the man's arm behind his back and slammed his head into the terminal. Sparks erupted. Blood splattered the screen. The handler slumped unconscious or dead. The alert system roared to life. Voices shouted from down the corridor. Footsteps echoed in chaos. But Taehyung was already gone. He moved like water through the maze of corridors, memory fragments guiding him through places he hadn't remembered until now. He passed rooms he vaguely recalled from broken dreams, hallways that smelled like antiseptic and betrayal. Screams leaked from behind closed doors, human or otherwise. He didn't look. He couldn't. Not yet. His pulse thundered like a war drum. The programming was still inside him. He could feel it crawling beneath his skin like a second skeleton. Commands flickered across his vision like HUD overlays. Eliminate. Obey. Forget. He gritted his teeth and powered through the pain, repeating one word over and over in his mind. Rooftop. A memory, a promise, a tether. He burst into the control center and grabbed the headset from a guard who barely had time to turn. "Trace Jungkook," he snarled into the microphone. The technician blinked. "W what?" "Jimin Jungkook, find him, now, you tagged us all, I know you did." Under threat of the gun Taehyung had stolen from the fallen handler, the man complied, fingers flying across the keyboard. A satellite feed lit up. A car moving through the Nevada-Arizona border, speeding toward Vegas. Unregistered, off-grid. But not invisible. Taehyung stared at the blinking dot on the screen. They were coming for him. He closed his eyes. And remembered. Geneva. The chair. The silence that followed the screaming. The words they whispered into his ear while his limbs were paralyzed, and his mind was screaming for help. "You are the weapon they will never suspect. You are the song they will all sing. You are the end." He had believed them. But now, for the first time, he felt doubt carve a crack into that belief. Because when Jungkook touched his chest when he said rooftop, the programming hadn't just stalled, it shattered. The connection was deeper than they'd accounted for. They built Taehyung into a bomb. But they didn't expect him to fall in love with the fuse. Thousands of miles away, Jungkook gripped the steering wheel tighter as a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked across the sky, and the rain returned like a memory summoned by pain. "He's alive," Jungkook said. Jimin looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because I can feel him." Jimin didn't argue. He had felt it too, just a flicker of heat in his chest, a sudden calm like an ember lighting in the cold. Taehyung wasn't gone, but the question remained, who was coming back? Jungkook turned the car toward Vegas, away from their planned route. "If he's breaking free, he'll need us. If he's not," he didn't finish. Jimin nodded. "Then we bring him back anyway." Back in Berlin, Taehyung stormed through the lower chamber of the facility, unlocking doors, freeing captives, most of whom could barely speak. They had been experiments like him, forgotten subjects, failed projects. The facility had hidden hundreds, all of them left to rot. No one knew their names. One girl, barely older than a teenager, looked up at him with hollow eyes and whispered, "Are you real?" Taehyung crouched beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "I think I am now." As explosions echoed from the upper levels, an alarm indicating the arrival of reinforcements, he led the survivors through the emergency tunnel, guiding them toward a future he wasn't sure existed. He could feel it. They would come for him now. They would burn the earth to erase him. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid. Because his memory was his weapon now. And at the heart of that memory was Jungkook. Inside a dusty safe house on the outskirts of Las Vegas, Jungkook and Jimin huddled over the cracked data drive they had salvaged from Cade's bunker. Files upon files, encrypted beyond comprehension, until one video file flickered to life. It was Taehyung. Pre-Geneva. A real message, a confession. "If you're seeing this," the recording began, "then I've probably forgotten who I am. I probably hurt someone, maybe even you. I'm sorry." Jungkook leaned in, barely breathing. "I didn't know what they were doing at first, but I saw the signs. I felt the voices, and if they get to me, if they turn me, I need you to do one thing." The video glitched, then returned. "Remind me of the rooftop. Remind me of the night we promised to be more than the world made us. That night, I didn't say it out loud, but I wanted to." He looked into the camera. "I love you, Jungkook." Jimin looked away, wiping his eyes. Jungkook sat in silence, heart pounding like war drums again, but softer now, not from fear, from hope. Then the power cut. The screen died. Jungkook looked at the window just as a shadow passed it. They had found them. But this time he didn't run. He stood and whispered, "Come back to me, T." The door exploded inward before Jungkook could blink. The shockwave hurled him backward into the rusted metal table, ribs slamming into steel as a deafening screech pierced his ears. Shattered glass and drywall rained across the floor. Jimin screamed from somewhere behind the kitchen wall, but the sound was drowned out by the thunder of black boots storming the safe house. Jungkook rolled, gasping, blood dripping from his scalp, and dragged himself toward the overturned couch. Gunfire erupted, suppressed, clinical, merciless. He didn't know if Jimin was still breathing. He couldn't think, couldn't plan, just move. His fingers found the pistol under the couch cushion, the one they'd stolen from the man who tried to drug them outside Reno. He gripped it with numb hands, breathing shallow through cracked ribs, and counted the shadows as they passed through the smoke. 3, 4, 5. He fired at the nearest figure, hitting center mass. The man crumpled without a sound, face hidden behind an anonymous matte black helmet. The others turned instantly, weapons raised. Fuck! Jungkook dove behind the shattered table as bullets slammed into the wall behind him. The heat from each shot seared the air inches from his cheek. From the hallway, another voice roared, a voice Jungkook never thought he'd be afraid of. Cease fire. Silence. Dust. Then footsteps. Not heavy boots. Barefoot. Soft. Measured. Taehyung. He emerged from the smoke, still dressed in the black tactical gear from Berlin, eyes unreadable, hands outstretched. His hair clung wet to his forehead from the desert heat. His lips were parted, barely breathing, and in his hands no weapon, nothing but a single object. The photo. The one from the rooftop. Jungkook stood, shaking, gun still in hand. Don't come closer. Taehyung didn't stop. You told me to come back. You're not him, Jungkook said, voice cracking. They've used you, twisted you, you killed people. I remember, Taehyung whispered. I remember all of it. Jimin staggered from the hallway, bruised but alive. Taehyung turned to him slowly. They activated the trigger in Berlin, but I didn't break. I burned it from the inside. They still think they control me. They're watching from the sky right now, waiting for me to finish the mission. Then why are you here? Jungkook asked, lowering the gun an inch but still aiming. Because I want to remember who I was before them, Taehyung said, stepping closer. Before the chair, before Geneva, before the voices. I want to remember the rooftop. I want to remember what you said to me when you thought I was asleep. Jungkook's heart felt like it might tear from his chest. You remember that? I didn't then, Taehyung said, but I do now. The commandos behind him didn't move. They stood perfectly still, as if frozen in time, awaiting orders like dolls. Jimin whispered, What did you do to them? I flipped the signal, Taehyung said softly. The neural network that was controlling me, I used it against them. They're not dead, just sleeping, for now. Jungkook dropped the gun. So what now? You walk away and pretend none of this happened. You act like they didn't build you into a weapon and point you at us like a loaded gun. No, Taehyung said. I destroy everything they built. Jimin narrowed his eyes. How? Taehyung pulled a small drive from the pocket of his vest. This, everything, the experiments, the command sequences, the files on every compromised subject in every country, names, codes, audio logs, all of it, this ends them. Jungkook stared. How do we know it's not a trap? You don't, Taehyung said, but I burned the match. I broke the chain. I chose to walk into this room instead of finish the mission. Isn't that enough? Jungkook walked slowly toward him, his chest tight with something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in weeks. Hope, or its dangerous cousin, forgiveness. He reached out and took the drive. Their hands touched. And in that moment, Taehyung fell forward. A single red dot blinked on his forehead. Sniper! The sound came half a second later, too fast to scream, too sharp to dodge. Jungkook caught him before he hit the floor. Jimin screamed. The commandos stirred like broken marionettes. One collapsed, another staggered and dropped. Something had triggered a chain reaction in the control net. Taehyung's override had backfired or been discovered. Blood poured from the side of his head, staining Jungkook's shirt as he held him close, shaking violently. No, 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 no. T, stay with me, stay the fuck with me. Taehyung blinked slowly, his body seizing once, then softening. It's okay, he murmured. It's enough. Jungkook gritted his teeth, sobbing now. You don't get to say that. You don't get to die in my arms and call it enough. I remembered, Taehyung whispered. What? The rooftop, he breathed. I wasn't asleep. Jungkook's face crumpled. I heard everything, Taehyung said. Then he smiled and closed his eyes. The storm raged around them. The safe house was gone, their lives shattered and burned, but in Jungkook's hands the drive still glowed. The truth. The final war had just begun. The hospital room was too white, too quiet, too clean for a world that had just bled to death in Jungkook's arms. Taehyung hadn't moved in 72 hours. Not a twitch. Not a whisper. Machines breathed for him. Monitors dictated his rhythm, steady but unnatural, like a song looping on a broken record. Jungkook sat by the bed, fingers interlaced and bruised, the dried blood still crusted beneath his nails. His eyes were hollow, sleepless, haunted. He hadn't spoken since the moment they tore Taehyung from his arms at the safe house, still warm, still blinking, his blood soaking into Jungkook's palms like ink into paper. Jimin was on the other side of the room, packing like a caged animal. Paranoia etched into his bones. He kept checking the windows, the door, the hall. Every nurse could be a handler, every orderly a mole. The sniper hadn't been found. No one had claimed responsibility. No one needed to. They all knew. The system hadn't failed. It had followed through. The bullet hadn't killed Taehyung, but it had silenced him. That was worse. You need to eat, Jimin muttered, not even looking as he spoke. You're turning into a goddamn ghost. Jungkook didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Taehyung's chest, rising and falling under the sheets. That was all that mattered now. Proof that he was still there. Proof that he hadn't slipped away when Jungkook blinked. They're going to come for the drive, Jimin said. You know that, right? They know we have it. They know he gave it to us. You think they'll just let us upload the data and walk away? Still no response. Jimin snapped, say something. Jungkook slowly turned. His voice was gravel. They shot him after everything, after he came back, after he chose us. Jimin swallowed, his face twisting. I know. No, you don't. You didn't feel his heartbeat stop in your arms. You didn't see his eyes flicker when he tried to speak and couldn't. You weren't there when he bled all over the floor trying to tell me it was enough. Jimin stepped forward. And if you keep drowning in guilt, he dies for real. That stopped Jungkook cold. Jimin took a shaky breath. He didn't come back to watch you fall apart. He came back to end it. The system, the handlers, the voices. Geneva, Berlin, all of it. That drive in your jacket, it's not just files, it's justice, it's revenge, it's his voice, his truth. And we are the last people on this earth who can make them listen. Jungkook's hand moved slowly to his chest. The drive was still there, warm against his heart. You think we can win? He asked. No, Jimin said, but we can burn them down trying. The door opened behind them. Jungkook reached for the gun beneath his chair, but paused when he saw her. Yuna. She hadn't been seen in almost a year. Former tech analyst for HYBE, once a whistleblower, vanished after leaking early blueprints of the Seraphim files to a rogue European journalist. She was supposed to be dead, but here she was, standing in scrubs like she belonged here. I've been watching, she said, closing the door behind her. Jungkook stood slowly. Then you know what's on the drive. I helped create it, she replied. Jimin's eyes widened. You were part of the project. Not by choice. They pulled me in when I was 20, told me I was building a biometric interface for health monitoring, but it wasn't health they were interested in. It was control, emotional modulation, cognitive override. When I found out what they were doing to idols, politicians, children, her voice cracked. I ran. Why come back now? Jungkook asked, cold. She looked at Taehyung. Because he wasn't supposed to survive, and he did, and that means the program failed. Jimin narrowed his eyes, or it means it evolved. She didn't argue. Instead, she held out a card. This is a secure upload node, off-grid, encrypted beyond the agency's reach. It was supposed to be my kill switch. You want to leak the files, this is how, but once you do it, they will erase everything. Everyone. You, me, him, anyone connected. Jungkook stared at the card, then at Taehyung. I don't care. He took it. But Jimin hesitated. What if it's not enough? What if they spin it? Say we fabricated everything. We're just entertainers. We're disposable. No, Yuna said quietly. You're visible, and that makes you dangerous. They left that night. No fanfare. No goodbye. Jungkook leaned down one last time before leaving the hospital room, brushing Taehyung's hair from his forehead, lips barely grazing the skin. I'll finish it, he whispered, and when you wake up, we'll be free. They drove for hours, switched cars twice, phones destroyed, signals jammed. They uploaded the files from a signal tower built into the skeleton of a forgotten radio station. It took 12 minutes. 12 minutes to shatter the world. Everything, every file, every blueprint, every voice recording, every name, every psychological profile, every bribe, every execution order, every erased identity was blasted into the global datasphere. Unfiltered, unedited, unforgiving, and the world responded like dry wood meeting fire. The backlash was immediate. Nations reeled. Media imploded. Millions took to the streets. HYBE denied it all, then deleted their website, then disappeared. Anonymous accounts began uploading confirmation videos. Testimonies from artists, victims, scientists, even ex-operatives. The truth couldn't be contained. And somewhere deep in the chaos of a crumbling empire, in the stillness of a hospital room far from Seoul, Kim Taehyung opened his eyes. The monitor beeped once. Then again. Jimin and Jungkook arrived 2 hours later. They found him sitting upright, staring out the window at the rain. He didn't turn when they entered. Just whispered, "You did it, didn't you?" Jungkook stepped forward, eyes filled with tears. "We did." Taehyung turned, smiled, but behind the smile, something lingered. An echo, a shadow. Jimin saw it too, the flicker of a command buried deep in his eyes. He stepped closer. "Do you remember everything?" Taehyung nodded slowly, every second. "And the programming?" Taehyung looked at Jungkook, still there, waiting. Jungkook touched his hand. "Then we'll keep reminding you every single day." And as the storm continued outside, the three of them sat together in silence, broken, bloodied, branded by a war they never asked for. But alive. And for the first time in months. Together.